And in the hospital, they hooked me up to an IV and they gave me Dilaudid. And I said, okay, I can love this. This is something that's going to kill me one day, and I'm okay with that.
I'm a former Detroit police officer and rode with the 1%er motorcycle club. During that time, I was involved in a lot of altercations. I had a gun shoved in my face. The trigger was pulled, and I got a plate under my left eye. I'm Manny Vitale, and this is my story. Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Manny Vitale, host of My Fight, Our War, and we are here back at our home in Connecticut. And we've got a very special guest, Eric Rubenstein. I had to say it quick before I messed up the last name. But we are back in our second home in Connecticut and just sharing a lot of information, a lot of very important, meaningful stories from people who are dealing with addiction personally, family members, friends, and just to get the word out that first and foremost, that addiction's only a word. Addiction is not a death sentence. And we're here living proof of that. And the biggest thing, too, is when dealing with people with addiction, the biggest thing that I'm learning doing this stuff is communication and not judging.
Sure.
So, Eric.
Who are we to judge?
Yeah.
I have done some abhorrent shit.
I'm telling you, man. Eric, thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me.
And, just start. It's we are shy, some people. Well, we are shy guests. We were supposed to be Eric plus two. It was going to be Eric and his dogs. They weren't going to be in here. They were going to be out there. Yeah. But dogs decided to tear up the place, so you're stuck with just me and Eric. But thank you, man.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
Start it off, man. Let's just jump right in. And why don't you tell people, who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, so my name is Eric Rubenstein. I'm a therapist in Connecticut. Originally born in New Jersey. Short Hills, New Jersey. It's this little town, sort of 30 to 40 minutes outside of New York City. And it's a pretty wealthy town. So, I can't tell my story or talk about my life without acknowledging that I did grow up with a lot of privilege. And it is something that, about me, that I did have resources that a lot of people do not. From the outside, as all those lives do, like everything was great. My dad is a doctor, grew up. I did not want for anything to have to ask for anything. But the thing that I didn't know to ask for and that I didn't feel that I had was emotion and emotional connection. It always felt like me and my family, there were 6 of us. We were all just like 6 separate people, just like living together in the same household. Like we were all roommates.
Was this like for your siblings as well? Did everyone feel that kind of disconnect?
I think so, because I think that we still also me and my oldest sister were good. But there will sometimes be like a little bit of a disconnect there, saying I love you to them doesn't feel weird, but for a while it did.
Really?
Yeah. But we were happy, we weren't sad. We would play together and hang out together. But as we got older, there was, I think, like a year where I just never talked to my brother, and he was downstairs. He was in his own room. But we were contentious as brothers are, and, that's sort of what it was like for us growing up. I played sports and had a lot of friends and, was popular for points of my life. Mm-hmm. But then there was also some not so great parts, when, I guess for whatever reason, I was a very angry child. And so my parents did not know what to do with me often. So they would just put me in a room, sometimes for hours and sometimes for a whole day. And
like for punishment?
Yeah.
Go to your room kind of thing?
Correct. But it wasn't my room. It was just like a spare room that we had in our basement. And there was like a latch on the outside. So I was locked in there.
Oh.
Yeah. And I know that my parents did not do that to be abusive or to be whatever. I think that they just did not know what to do with me. So through the years of doing my own therapy, I learned that my younger self internalized that as, you are too much to deal with. We can't love you because we don't know what to do with you. You have too many feelings. And so I think I grew up with that sort of innate feeling about myself. And I struggled a lot with who I was and who my identity was. And I tried to be all these different people and tried to be, I would watch The Office and try to be John Krasinski, even though, like, looking back, like, Jim Halpert is like a terrible person. I don't know if you watch The Office, but, so that's what that was. And so there was a lot of, I became very judgmental of my friends and my siblings that were using, experimenting with substances and drinking alcohol. my mom was also very against it. And I guess to win her approval, I would also say, absolutely not. I will never drink. I will never do drugs, whatever, until I did, So, middle school, I was completely isolated because my friends that I was hanging out with growing up, they were already experimenting with drinking and alcohol.
In middle school?
In middle school, yeah.
Like, where you talking, 6th grade, 7th grade?
I would say 7th grade. I remember very vividly, I went to, it was, very Jewish town. So it was like all the bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. And like, I would see my friends like in the corner and I would go hang out with them, be like, yo, like go away. And I realized that they were drinking, which is whatever. That was normal for us. And so I didn't do that. I was very against it, even though I didn't really understand why. And so I kind of isolated myself in the basement, in the same room that I was always locked in. I went there. We had turned it into like a room to watch TV and with a couch. So I would sit there for days and just play video games and watch TV and whatever. And, I had some friends, but I was pretty antisocial. I didn't like to go out. I didn't like to do anything, which is kind of like how I am now, but that's like by choice. And it was like that until I would say high school, when my sister came home from college and I lied to her and said that I had smoked a ton of weed. And so she's like, oh, do you want to go smoke? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that was actually my first time smoking. And I didn't feel anything, but I felt cool, right? So I had some friends that also were doing it. This is sophomore in high school. So I started getting into it. And something about me that has even followed me to this day is when I'm into something, I am all fucking in.
So there's no halfway with you, man.
So like, if I'm going to get a little bit interested in lacrosse, on my first day, I'm going to go buy the most expensive lacrosse stick that there is and all the best gear. And I'm going to be fucking terrible at lacrosse. And I'm never going to touch it again. I can't just do something casually. And so when I got introduced to marijuana, I wasn't just going to smoke on the weekends. I was going to go to New York City and buy the nicest like bongs and bowls and like all of this stuff. And I was going to start selling drugs and be the guy that was known for weed, because that's what was cool. And that's what helped me connect and helped me belong in the circle.
You were accepted.
Correct. Gotcha. Realistically, the friends that I had that had been drinking and that I grew up with and am still best friends with to this day, they wouldn't have cared. But for me, it felt like I had to do that.
Like a validation or
Correct.
something. Gotcha.
Correct. So, I reconnected with those guys, junior year in high school, and that was like my crew. And, we started experimenting with more. We would steal our parents' scripts and, take their pills. I remember one party we were playing beer pong and we would put Klonopin in each cup. So I can't tell you how much Klonopin I ended up ingesting like in a nightly time. And then I would fucking drive, You were
playing Klonopin.
Yeah. That's actually a great name for it. We should have thought of that. And so that was just like normal to us. It was fine. And, that's when Xanax bars were a big thing. And we didn't have to worry about fentanyl yet, I don't think. But that was my junior and senior year. And the thing I never cared about was school. I was always focused on hanging out with friends, being seen as popular and cool. And, my parents got divorced at the time. So like I was also hiding some shit there, like trying to suppress my emotions by using and just being with my friends. So I never emphasized education at all. And so by the time high school ended, I had nowhere to go. So I decided I wanted to make marijuana like my life. And I ended up moving out to Los Angeles, California. Really big into Entourage at the time. I thought that I could have that life. I could be a movie star or a producer or something, an agent. And that was not the case. I lasted about one semester in community college in Santa Monica before I got involved in the marijuana industry. And, it started with me just like working for a dispensary, and it evolved into me trafficking across the country, like a lot of marijuana.
Talking about bulk.
So I had, for all of my friends went to colleges, like the big colleges, Syracuse, University of Miami, and they needed California weed. And so I would get into my friend's Jeep. I would have 25, 30, 100 pounds of weed in the car, and we would just drive across the country. And I thought nothing of it because it's like break one law at a time.
It was normal.
Correct. That was the thing to do. It didn't seem like a wild thing. And then, I did that for about a year, and then it ended. I had a friend that got arrested. I got paranoid, and I left. In between this time, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I remember it was the weekend of Coachella, and my friends went to Coachella, and I stayed at home. And I remember just like violently throwing up and feeling a lot of pain in my stomach. And my dad's a doctor, so I called him at midnight their time, so it was 3 a.m. And I'm telling him like, yo, I do not feel well. I'm throwing up. I'm in pain. He sends me to the hospital. And in the hospital, they hooked me up to an IV, and they gave me Dilaudid. And I said, okay, I can love this. This is something that's going to kill me one day, and I'm okay with that. And it was kind of off to the races from there. So from then on, a lot of my life revolved around the idea of how can I get more Dilaudid? How can I get this pill? Because this feels great. And I think I chased that for about 2 years before I like did something about it. In that time, I went down to Florida to go to a film school. I got a film degree, which is useless for me right now, but I know things about film. And so I graduated, I got a bachelor's degree, all while maintaining this like hardcore oxy addiction, being funded by my dad. He would send me money for like groceries and stuff, and I would just immediately go buy drugs. Anything I had of value, I would just pawn so that I could buy them. And so by the time I graduated, I had nowhere to go. So I went back up to New Jersey to live with my dad. And that was a heated environment. I was with my dad and his wife at the time who, I was not getting along with. And I didn't have a job. I didn't care about one. I just wanted to do oxy. So my dad would give me his debit card and tell me to get groceries for the week. I'd get like $30 worth of groceries, and I would just get cash back and go buy drugs. And, like all things, it was just not sustainable. Excuse me. So I was doing oxy, and then I would mix in some Klonopin every once in a while. And that's sort of where things took a turn. And I don't remember what happened. I just remember waking up in a hospital. And the ironic thing is it's like a hospital that my dad is like very prominent at. So I'm there like chained to a bed yelling, like, I think my go-to thing at the time, which is common for a lot of Jews, you can cut that out, is to call people anti-Semitic. And there was nothing happening. I was just being an asshole. And from what I learned was eventually like they wouldn't let me go. So I tried to run out, and they tackled me and then, locked me up. They sent me to a psych ward, and that was fun.
In the same hospital? In this hospital?
No, in a different hospital. It's like in East Orange, New Jersey. And if you know anything about New Jersey, East Orange is not the greatest. So it was just like little white me in a hardcore psych ward for 3 days. Like they were giving me whatever they were giving me. I couldn't talk. I could not get words out. I tried to call my dad. I tried to call my mom, and I just could not speak. And after I started to come back in, they gave me less medication. They were like, you need to go to Detox. So I said, I don't know what that is. And they were like, that doesn't matter. So they put me in a car, or an ambulance, I think it was, and drove me down to Princeton, New Jersey. And that's where I attended my first detox, where I knew nothing about anything. I didn't know what Suboxone was. I still didn't think I was an addict. I didn't think I had a problem. Everything I thought I was doing was completely normal. My friends did a lot more drugs than me. They were doing coke and ecstasy and stuff. Like I was just doing oxy. And I was there for a few days, and then I called my dad, and, I was like, Dad, like, just let me come home. Like, I'm not a drug addict. Like, I just got too fucked up one day. And he goes, I used to have a son that was really happy and really cool, and now I just have some drug addict. And that was the last time I talked to my dad for a long time. We've since reconnected, and we're good now, but that sucked. And the next thing I knew, I was being put on a plane to go to some place in Florida to go to rehab. Still not knowing anything, still not thinking I'm a drug addict. I'm just around these drug addicts. And the rehab I went to, it was like my dad just Googled drug rehab and like sent me to the first place that he found, because it was terrible. It was like the people that worked there had just discharged like 3 days ago. So like they were just like very closely removed from their last use, and I'm pretty sure they were also high. So like it just like wasn't a conducive environment.
And now they're working there as employees?
Correct. Like that's just like, I don't even think it's open anymore.
It's not like you were in a trap house.
Essentially, yeah. That they put us in houses, and like the dudes next door like were actively like getting drugs. It was wild. I was like, aren't I supposed to be getting better?
So you're in rehab using.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what was happening. Correct. And I would try to call my dad, and he would just ignore me. I remember I actually got to Tampa, And he turned my phone off while I was on the plane. So I get there and I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea what was happening. I just had to figure it out. Eventually I did. I didn't stay there long. I was not happy. I think this is what happened. I had a bad dream where I was violent in that dream. And I told my therapist that I had this dream. And then the cops came because they thought that I was suicidal or homicidal. So they sent me to a psych ward. Once again, my feelings are too much. We don't know what to do with you. We're going to go throw you in a room.
We'll lock you away.
Yeah. And it quite literally happened because someone got sick and I had to be quarantined in the psych ward, so I couldn't leave that room. And that was scary. I was there for like 2 weeks and no one knew what to do with me. They said I couldn't go to a regular rehab because I was too I was too dysregulated. I was too much for like some random rehab.
So you were too much for a psych ward?
Too much to be referred to like their typical rehabs. So they had to find a place that was a dual diagnosis. And I didn't even know what my diagnosis was. And to this day, I don't know if they were correct or on the mark with it. I think that I was just a fucking drug addict who wanted to just do drugs and was unhappy that I was being sent a bunch of places that I didn't know where I was going. But, you know, I landed in another rehab in Orlando, Florida, which is the old stomping ground for when I went to school and used to buy drugs, which doesn't play into me being in rehab. But like whenever we would go on trips, I'd be like, oh yeah, I used to cop here. Oh yeah, I used to get here too, guys. So I was in that rehab for 90 days and I played the part. I drank the Kool-Aid. It was fine. I went to the AA meetings. I did my thing. And I was fine. You know, I got out and had a girlfriend that I met in rehab. So like naturally that was the best. I was that kid who was sober for like maybe 3 weeks. And I love this. This is the greatest thing. I'm going to be sober for the rest of my life. My life is so amazing. I have this amazing girlfriend. She goes to rehab with me. Like, how cool is that? And, you know, I was able to maintain that little persona for as long as I could. And the thing about that rehab was like, even though I was there, I still got in trouble. I still acted out. We went to... I haven't thought about any of this stuff for a long time, so it's all just kind of coming back to me. Sure. I apologize.
Oh, no.
They took us to an outside AA meeting, and I had a friend that used to be in that rehab meet me there with a cell phone so I could have a cell phone. And I remember texting some other people, and I was like, yo, I got a burner. Like, I meant burner phone. And this person's girlfriend saw it and thought I meant gun. So they called the cops. So I'm just like walking around the rehab complex and just like wandering. And I could notice that the staff was watching me and I didn't know why. And then next thing I know, the cops are there and they're searching me and searching my shit. And there's like, where's the fucking gun? I was like, I don't have a gun, you know? And then they found the phone and that was that. So even in rehab, I could not keep my shit together, but I was sober. You know, I wasn't using. That was the important thing. So anyway, got out of rehab, was living in Daytona Beach with a family friend. And I was able to be abstinent, you know, for about a year and a half, put together some time. And then time and circumstance happened. A guy came in who I was working at Walgreens at the time. He had no money, but he needed me to do a favor for him because his wife was going to divorce him. He needed some screenshots from his phone. And he said, I can get you pain meds. So I said, great, let's do that. And so that became my thing. And I would hang out with him and I would give him money and he would go get me the drugs. And so then I was kind of in full-fledged, you know, addiction again. And it didn't last very long. For me to eventually wear that guy out because he was just some dad who like knew how to get pain pills. He was not ready for the volume that I needed. So he disappeared. And then I was now sick, not because I was using so many pills and I needed to find a way to use. So I went onto the internet and I was doing message boards and I went on Reddit and I found some random guy in Daytona Beach who could help me. And I remember, you know, I bought from him a couple times and then eventually there was no more pills. He said, the only thing I can get for you is heroin. And I said, is that bad? And he was like, no, I'll teach you how to use it. It's fine. You know, and he taught me like the biggest lesson in life, which is what I tell a lot of people in a harm reduction method. You know, you can always do more, but you can never undo drugs that you've already done. So he taught me to like take it slow and all that. And then pretty soon I was just like, you know, out there in the wild. I think that we all have this point as addicts where there's a line that we will never cross. I will never do X, Y, Z. And I was miles across that line very quickly. And I wasn't even thinking about it. So, relapsed again, was now on heroin, I guess, and paranoid that my coworkers were going to report me for being high on heroin. So I called my mom and said, yeah, I'd like to move in with you, because she lived in North Florida at the time. So I moved in with her, did the same thing, found a guy on Reddit, sold me heroin. And then eventually, I came clean because I didn't have any more money. I stole cash from my mom and like convinced her that she was just crazy. She was like, where's the money? I said, I don't know. I didn't take it. And then, she's not that dumb, she's not stupid at all. But eventually I came clean to her. And you know how when we're in trouble, we need to control the narrative so that we can control the effects. I wrote her the nicest letter that was like, I am so sorry. This is what happened. I don't need to go back to rehab. I'll go to detox. I'll do an outpatient. Everything will be fine. And she bought it. And everything was fine again for a little bit. I went to detox, the coolest detox, I think, in the world. Smoothies whenever I wanted them. And I had to pay for my insurance covered it. I think they were doing something sketchy because they shut down too. But I got a robe. I was able to have my phone. I was able to like gamble on DraftKings when that was like brand new. So like I was living the life and also like getting like Suboxone and Valium, like everything I wanted until they kicked me out. So that worked. I was clean for another year and a half, living in Jacksonville, Florida, putting together a life. I met a girl. She had a daughter. And I played stepdad for a little while until we broke up. And then I was sad again. And then I said, I'm going to go do this again. So this time, same exact story. I was trying to get Oxy. I was doing Oxy for a couple weeks and then that dried up. So then it was heroin again. And I didn't think anything of it. And so fast forward, it got to a point where I was spending about $600 a day on drugs, funding it through my mom's accounts. I was writing checks to myself and it was bad. And eventually it all came crashing down as it does. I was pawning her jewelry. I was doing really terrible things. And, I've since worked my way to repay her and help repay her however I can. But I can't repay the emotional toll, but I'll do what I can. And ended up, I woke up, there was some guy sitting on the couch next to my mom and he was like, and I knew the vibe. This is an intervention. Like I knew. I was like, all right, let me just take a nap. We can go do this. It's fine. So I went back to detox where I got to have my cell phone. And every day I'm calling my mom, trying to lay the groundwork. I'm like, yo, it's fine. Like I'll be detox. Like I can do this. Like I don't have to go to rehab. But this time she wasn't fucking buying it. This time someone was coaching her. She knew exactly what to say. I was like, you fucker. Took classes in this shit. So she was like, yeah, you can either go to this rehab or you can go to the streets. I don't care. And then I was like, okay, fine. I'll go to rehab. But I want to go to this rehab. I want to make sure there's this. I want to make sure. She says, yeah, you're not doing that. And I was like, God damn, you got like a master's degree.
Man, someone's doing good.
You got like a master's degree in bullshit. And so she sent me to the worst possible place for someone like me. Kid from the suburbs, hung out in New York City. She sent me to the fucking wilderness. She sent me to a place where I would have to camp and be in a tent and a sleeping bag in the middle of winter in the mountains of North Carolina. Shout out to Red Oak Recovery. Place is great. Fucking hated it.
Saved my life.
Saved my life. I would never go there again, but I would send anyone that is struggling the way I did to there any day of the week.
And they're still around.
I think they are still around, yes. I actually have them tattooed on here.
I mean, you're not kidding. Tent, sleeping bag, winter.
Yep. We would be on base and do our therapy for Monday through Thursday. And then for the weekend, we'd hike 20 miles, 30 miles. And then we would camp, and then we'd go back. There was even a section of it. It was called Solo. It was like a rite of passage where they would send you to a part of a mountain alone for 4 days and 4 nights. In the morning, they would drop your food off. And then in the evening, they'd come collect your food because of bears. But I was just alone. And that's where I actually changed. That's where I actually got to sit and think and be with myself, which sucked because I hate myself. And I had to come to terms with that. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I had thrown away like the first, formative years of my life and just trying to just do drugs and normalize all of this stuff, thinking that everyone goes through this. And then all the memories of things that I used to do for drugs was like playing back in my head. 2 a.m. trying to push a car through snow that like no one's supposed to drive through, but I needed to cop. No one does that. Well, people like me fucking do that. But for some reason, I thought it was like normal. I thought that my friends who were like at Syracuse University and partying and stuff, they were also doing that. And I realized how insane that was. And I realized that it was me all along. You know, I was the issue. And so I was okay. I was like, all right, I can do this. I can change. I can be better. And I worked with a therapist there who was incredible. Shout out Mark. And he was just like wouldn't let me bullshit anything. He wouldn't let me be sly. He wouldn't let me be cool or smart. He would just call me out. And so when it came time to discharge, I was like, I think we're just going to go back home and live with my mom. And he was like, yeah, you're not doing that. And I said, no, I'm gonna. And he was like, no, you're not. He was like, but what about my girlfriend? I was like, no, you're breaking up with her. So I broke up with that girl. And because we had gotten back together. And a lot of the kids I went to that rehab with, they went to like places in Utah, San Diego, Arizona. That was not an option for me because I didn't have money. And so me and my mom, we didn't really know what to do with me. Once again, I don't know what to do with Eric. So luckily through intervention of some sort, this place in New Haven, it's called Turnbridge, they decided that they would take me in on a financial scholarship and that my insurance covered part of it. So the housing they would take care of. And so that's how I ended up here in Connecticut, actually, 2018. I was put on a plane, went to New Haven, and that program was a year long. It started out in phase 1 where you're kind of locked down in a house and they kind of control your movement. Phase 2, you get a little bit more freedom. You go out, you can get a job. And then phase 3 is basically kind of like a sober house where like you're operating on your own. You need to be back at a certain time. Once again, fucking hate them. I love everyone at Turnbridge. Would never do that again in my life. I am so thankful for them. I have friends that still work there, friends that still go there, and I, eternally grateful. But fuck them because I felt I was entitled to all this freedom that I did nothing for. I was 20 something years old. I should be able to go out and spend more than $11 a day, but never in my life had I proven to myself that I could spend less than $11 a day. So they had to teach me how to like live a normal life. And that's kind of what that was for. And it definitely worked. Fast forward, I got a job working in a new inpatient rehab in New Haven. I started out as like a tech and then became a case manager. Like as I grew sober and grew in my sobriety, like people started trusting me with like real deal shit. And I was like, this is fucking weird. So I'm a case manager at a rehab and then I'm running the case management department at the rehab. And, things went down at that rehab and it's no longer open. The company doesn't operate anymore, which is like a whole different story. But throughout the time I worked there, I went and got my master's degree in social work. And, I got married and, developed hobbies and made friends that were like actual friends and connections. Cause that's something I never cared to have. I mean, I have my high school friends who I will always love, but throughout the time that I was shaking and moving, I didn't create connections. I created people that I was kind of using transactionally.
Yeah. Your friends were your dealers.
Correct. And so now I have friends that I can call on and hang out with. And I'm not always the best at it because, I really like being at my house with my dogs and my wife. But if I want to hang out, I can. And I work in a private practice now as a therapist where I work with people that struggle with the same things that I did and other stuff too, just mental health. But, because it really all plays into each other. And, that's sort of my life now. And none of it, growing up, if I wasn't going to be a center fielder for the Yankees or like some hotshot lawyer, I didn't know what I was going to be. There were times where I subscribed to I'll be dead by 27 and I was fine with that. And now I'm in my 30s and I'm just like on borrowed time and it's weird because I didn't know what to do. So I found that I was good at connecting with people that were like me. I was good at helping people who have been through addiction or are currently going through addiction. I can give them a very realistic point of view that I'm not going to paint a rosy picture that everything's just going to magically like be better. Just because you're sober doesn't mean you're not an asshole anymore. Like you still have to work every single day to be better than the person that you were. And I think people like that because, you go to a lot of these rehabs, you go to a lot of AA meetings, and people talk as if everything is perfect, but that's just not the case. So I try to bring sort of a realistic point of view when it comes to recovery. And, I got involved with a nonprofit through complete happenstance. I was trying to get therapy dogs for my rehab that I was working in. And I found this place because they do comfort dogs. And I started to talk to the people that run it, and they're amazing people. It's an amazing organization called For Cameron. And I work with them now. And, that's another way that I give back to the recovery community. And I know I'm missing out on things. I know I droned on about a lot of irrelevant things, but that's
No.
That's
I mean, the thing is with with doing what we do is our stories. That's why I always tell a guest at the end, this isn't a one and done because our stories, our lives aren't one and done.
right.
Okay, people ask all the time, man, how do you get sober? It's really easy. Stop doing drugs. Stop drinking. Well, is it that easy? Yeah.
It's
But
the
it
easiest part
being
of it.
staying sober and recovery, no, I didn't say that was easy. If it was, there wouldn't be addicts.
Yeah.
The point is it hard work? Yeah. Is it worth it? Hell yes. Because you and I are sitting here with other people who have been on this show, know people who are no longer with us. And I know for me, I sit back and I have to deal with with my issues. We all, just like with my Fight Our War, when I named it, it was out of nowhere. I was sitting there one day and I got up and I went into the kitchen and I, at my issue, I was told I had 6 weeks to live, because my kidneys, pancreas, and liver shut down. I was yellow as a banana. They took me to the hospital. When you're doing a bunch of drugs and you drink a fifth and a half a day, it happens. So
Naturally.
30 days in hospital, 15 ICU. They're like, listen, unfortunately, your kidneys, pancreas, and liver shut down. They're not functioning anymore. Say goodbye to your family. Hospice is taking over your care. Well, I did. And next thing you know, they're taking blood and they're doing all this stuff. And long story short, 7 days later, they're taking my blood still. And all these people are coming into my room to take my blood. And I'm like, well, this is weird. They came in the seventh day and the doctor said I was going to die is laughing at me. And I was like, you fucking people are nuts. You're sending me home to die. And his associate, this lovely female, she starts crying. She goes, Manny, we're sending you home to live.
Wow.
She goes, your organs were no longer functioning. They don't turn on. But yet when we took your blood, there was movement, which we know had to be wrong. That's why we kept you. And every time we took it thereafter, it kept fluctuating to the point now your kidneys, pancreas, and liver are functioning at normal levels.
That's incredible.
And they're like, when they told you 6 weeks, we were trying to give you enough fight to say goodbye to your family. We all said you're going to be dead in 48 hours. Here I am, January 27th, 5 years sober.
Wow.
But this is 2020. COVID shut the world down. I never went to anything because everything was closed, and they didn't know what to do with Eric. They didn't know what to do with Manny because everything was closed. And like you, man, it's just like all of our stories are so different. But when it comes down to it, they're so the same.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling, and it's just like, you get to hearing all of like your story. It's like all this stuff, and then you get to this middle part. It's like, gotcha. I know what you feel. So that's like with your story, man. You're talking about all these different parts of your life. It's like, yeah, now I get it.
Yeah, it's hard to, every time I'm asked to tell my story, I never know which piece of Eric to tell and which part of it because as you get older and you get more far removed from the last use, you kind of are just like, well, did that really happen? Was I really doing this? Was that really me?
Well, just like, when you were talking about like people that don't know, and I love doing this because it's for people like me and you know what it's like to be fucked up and out of our minds and, that sick, that terrible feeling. Our families and loved ones, I know how you feel. No, you don't. You don't know that feeling. So for all of us that come on and the people that come on the show, it's good that we can share and talk. Anytime we talk, it opens up another door. But for our family and friends to hear the strength that addiction has, we are choosing our addiction over our family, our loved ones. I was all about family, man. I wanted to be the first one at the family party and the last to leave. all of a sudden drugs, alcohol. Yeah, Ma, Thanksgiving, I think I've got the flu and I'm not showing up. That's how strong addiction is, man.
Yeah.
You choose that over people you love. With your dad, with that episode with you in the hospital where he had privileges, I mean, here he gets this call, uh, doctor, your son's here. What the hell happened there when he showed up?
I don't.
Or do you even
I think
remember?
I remember him walking in and just like nodding. I think that was the last time I had seen him for a long time. And that sucked. And I can't imagine the humiliation that I caused him,
Because the staff is like, do you know who that is? What about your siblings? Throughout this process,
Yeah.
do any of them have issues with substance abuse?
No, I was the only lucky one there. But a lot of them aligned with my dad. Naturally, I caused a lot of fucking hell. And so, my sisters, I lashed out at them too. And I didn't talk to them for a while until, I eventually, reconnected. And, my oldest sister started learning more about addiction and started
Is
understanding.
that the one that you said, oh yeah, I spoke a bunch of weed? Is that the one that you kind of were, oh, okay.
Yeah, me and her, we were always the closest in terms of like the people that I did have. And
did she feel like responsible at all?
No, and she
like
shouldn't.
No, I'm saying, but sometimes how we're good at manipulating.
Oh yeah,
and it's your fault, not mine. We're good at that shit.
No, I think I just blamed everything and everybody before I could blame myself.
We keep raising that bar.
My dad for this, my mom for this, but ultimately, I mean, it was all me.
When you said that about, my friends, they're doing the same thing. It's, like for me, I was always, I'm not an addict. Addicts shoot up.
Right.
So as long as I don't have a needle in my arm, I'm not an addict. And that's how I kept raising the bar.
Correct.
Well, man, you're drinking a fifth a day. I'm not shooting up. Did you not just hear me? Oh, you know what? Just you give me shit. Thanks. Now I need a drink. Your fault.
Fifth a day is nothing. Look at what this guy's doing.
Yes, we keep raising the bar. Man, so you go from I tell people I was on a couple shows where they're like, what are you thankful for? First one, I'm thankful to be alive. I'm thankful for God for my blessings. And I'm thankful for addiction. They're like, what do you mean you're thankful for addiction? Are you fucking stupid? Well, if it wasn't, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, having this conversation to help others. So I thank addiction for that. I mean, addiction's screwed up because we're alive. Me and Eric are alive. We're about to kick the shit out of addiction. We're building our own army of, we're survivors.
Yeah.
We're blessed. And, with you, could you ever, I tell people, here, the thing that we hated so much is the one thing that we talk about that other people are benefiting from.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I talk to my wife about this all the time because my wife has never even smoked weed. She drinks casually.
Did she know you during the terrible years?
No, I met her 2020. I met her during COVID, and she was an ICU nurse in the COVID unit. And I said, this seems like a safe bet. And so we met and we started dating. And, I think that if we had met in high school, I wouldn't have fucked with her at all. And so I think about if I had just done anything minutely different. And when I have dreams of going back in the past, it's always like investing in Netflix and Bitcoin and all that. If I had even done that, I never would have met her. I would never have had the 2 dogs and the amazing life that I have. I would never be here. So I have no option but to acknowledge that this is what happened, that I can't change it, and to be thankful for it because it did bring me all of the stuff that I had. And it gave me, I came from a rich town. I was a little fuck. I was a little shit. You could not tell me anything. I needed something like that to humble me,
God, that is so true, man. And the entitlement. And it doesn't even matter if you come from all the means and all that stuff. When you're dealing with addicts, it doesn't matter if you're living in a trap house. Yeah. You feel that entitlement. What do you mean you're not going to give me an 8-ball, man? What? Now I got to go pawn something for it? You're not going to front me? It's just amazing, our minds.
And it continues when you're in treatment too. I remember, I would talk to a lot of the guys I would work with, like they're 3 days off the street. 3 days ago, they're eating popcorn off the floor of their car. They're finding shit on the train to eat. And they're like, this chicken's a little dry. I'm like, dude, like, come on.
Yeah, you're picking up the cushions to find money to buy, a White Castle.
Yep.
God, that's just insane, man. The things that we've learned and done, man. I know for me, like some of the physical things, I don't like you. God bless you, man. With everything you've done and taking it further to get your degree and all this stuff. Because one of the things I'm famous for saying is, listen, I'll sit there. I do everything live at my other studio, and because I don't know any better. I never thought I'd be doing this. You always get those. If someone would have told you back then, you're going to have your own show. But first of all, I get nervous talking in front of two people. I start hyperventilating. No. So not only do I have like this, I do all my stuff live because I was too, what do you mean I got to hit this button, then this button, record, edit? Boy, you hit this, you go live. Poof. Hey, welcome to the show. Well, what if you screw up? That's kind of like my life.
Yeah.
You know what? Take me for what I am. Because I had this guy that was helping me when I first started. He was actually an actor and a producer. And I'm doing this stuff, green as can be, but my first interview, it just, all of a sudden, I went for an hour and a half, my first one, nonstop. The guy's like, all right, seriously, man, how long you been doing this? I'm like, this is my first interview. He's like, dude, you're a natural.
Wow.
But when you're talking from something so passionate that almost killed me, you don't have to have a script. And yet this guy was like, all right, man, here's what you got to do. When you're talking about this, really act like, I'm like, I don't need you anymore. And I got rid of this guy.
Yeah.
And it's like I always say, there is no script. This is real life. I'm not going to sit here and sell something, that damn near killed me.
Yeah.
And, for anyone like, the PTSD from being shot, being stabbed, from our friends that we've lost, the nightmares, trying to get that across to people by you doing what you're doing, and with your practice. How does that go? I mean, with your practice, if someone is in need, well, first of all, let's talk about your practice. What's it called? Where's it at? And where can people find you?
So my practice is Comprehensive Mental Health Solutions. We're based out of Milford, Connecticut. We do offer telehealth though, and in person. We have clinicians. We have adult therapy. We have adolescent therapy. We have a child psychiatrist. We have adult psychiatrists. We kind of do a lot of different services at once, and we treat a whole multitude of things. It's not just substance use. We treat anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of it. Or if you just want someone to complain to, because that's sometimes just as helpful. Holding on to this stuff in your head does not always help, and we need to start externalizing this. I think the one big thing that I would love to communicate in terms of everything is the stigma is just like of addiction, of having mental health. Like, I always equate it to like diabetes. It's not like I go to a party and I'm like, yo, that's your cousin Mark. He has diabetes. You don't fuck with him. We don't talk to him.
Yes.
Like, are you kidding? So it's important to normalize these things. And so I love working for the practice that I do. I love the people I work with. The psychiatrist I work with is kooky, but he's great. All of the clinicians I work with, they're friendly and amazing. And I think that, they do incredible work as well. And, for people who do need any type of help, it's great to just call anybody. I don't care if it's me or 211 or whoever. If you're in active use, call anybody you can. Get whatever help that you can.
See, and that's one thing I love too, is I tell people, listen, man, you talk about, alcohol addiction. If you're suffering from, drugs, heroin, meth, whatever, I go, you know what? It doesn't need a name, a diagnosis, or a title.
Right.
Sometimes you're just having a bad day.
Correct.
And you know what? That bad day could cause you to all of a sudden, now you just did heroin for the first time. Not because you're bipolar, not because you have anxiety or PTSD, because I had a bad day. Now all of a sudden it's rolled into, because I always say, if you're suffering from any type of addiction or mental health issues or anything else that doesn't have a title, reach out.
Yeah.
And you nailed it too, right before you came on, our last guest. I said, what's something that you would like to share with people about this? And she goes, that stigma. It said the same thing. Don't look at somebody with that preconceived notion, oh, that's the, like you said, the person, they got diabetes, man. You know,
Yeah, and I think that it's it can be tricky to also in terms of addiction is trying to convince people that it is a disease. And I think
yeah,
that the way that I see it, and because people are like, well, what if someone doesn't use? Are they still addicted? You can also have a pre-genetic predisposition to diabetes and heart failure, but if you live a healthy life, it's not going to affect you, right? It's people will be like, well, it was their choice to take drugs. You're right. If I got into a car and started driving and I couldn't stop the car, you wouldn't judge me for getting into the car. You would help me fix the brakes. You know what I mean? And so I think that
that's good.
that's the way we need to start thinking about this kind of thing, because it really, yeah, taking the drug for the first time was definitely a choice, but our brain gets rewired. Our brain says, I really like this. This makes me feel great. And then it's just off to the races. And eventually there is parts of it that we cannot control. It does not become a choice anymore. I hated that I used every single day, but waking up, I was sick. And with opiates, you're not gonna die with withdrawal, but you're gonna want to. So you're sweating all times in the day. You're hot and cold. You are, pardon me, you're shitting your brains out, And so eventually you're just using just to feel normal and level-headed. And I know that it's like that for people who suffer from alcoholism too, where they have the shakes and alcohol is the only thing that stops it.
Oh my
I don't
God.
like that I'm doing it, but there's something in my brain telling me that I have to.
Yes, that's insane, man. And yeah, you just nailed it on so many levels. Where I had he's like my brother. His son died from an overdose. He was like my little brother, and he
It's terrible.
was at home and in such a bad way. He was so sick, begging his dad, "Please take me downtown, man. Please take me, please." And he was like, "What are you nuts? What are you asking? Do you?" I mean, he was going nuts, and all of a sudden, Kevin started crying, his son, and he just said, "Dad, I don't want to be this way." And just the way he said that and the way he was looking at his dad, it just affected Rick so much that he goes, I understood that it wasn't Kevin. And, like for me, when I hear I talked to somebody one time. If I came walking in and I was kind of down, what's the matter, Manny? Oh, so and so. I just found a buddy of mine. He's dying. Oh, what happened? He's got cancer. And oh, that's terrible, man. What can we do to help? Oh, thank you. And then fast forward next day, walk in, all down. What's going on, man? Oh, a friend of mine's dying. Well, what happened? Oh, he's an addict. Oh, well, that's too bad. Well, that was his choice.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, you got two people that are
can you just
dying.
not be
This
an
is a
addict?
disease. Well, like you nailed it. It was a choice.
Yeah.
Yes, and the way you explained it. So for me, I want to keep doing this until I see a commercial and they're like, hey, listen, if you're suffering from heart disease, diabetes, cancer, addiction, add that onto the freaking list, man. And let's not be embarrassed because, as I've said, addiction's only a word. It's not a death sentence.
Correct.
But man, bro, I tell you what, I really, really appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah.
And if you're please, if there's anything else before that you want to get across, or that means a lot to you, let's.
Yeah. So along with the idea of kind of fighting the stigma, I do work with a nonprofit in New Haven,
Yes.
Connecticut called For Cameron Incorporated. And they actually, we do a lot. But number one is to help fight the stigma. The founders of it, Isabel and Fiona, their son passed away from an overdose. And, they used that to empower others and made this nonprofit. And we work to advocate for giving police officers Narcan pouches because everyone should have the same chance at living from an overdose as someone does a heart attack, just like they have defibrillators everywhere. You can also have Narcan. And they also, we advocate for harm reduction, which I know is a little bit of a hot button topic in the recovery field, but it really shouldn't be. Not everybody is ready to get sober. I actually have many clients who will tell me, I'm just not ready. So you meet them where they are and make it so that, okay, you're going to keep using, but let's at least make it so you don't die.
Exactly.
So things like needle exchanges and safe injection sites, I get it. You do not want that in your backyard. You don't want your house values to go down because there's addicts shooting up in a building, but at least they're not dying, right? The research shows that those places are safer. And so, For Cameron works to help push those kinds of policies. And Another thing they do, which is incredible, is they have comfort dogs that work with the New Haven police that go. One of them just kind of hangs out in one of the schools and helps children that are, a little emotionally dysregulated, or if there's a traumatic incident, like the dogs are there. I remember Fiona was telling me there was a kid who was taken out of a horrible home. There was violence, and the dog was just there with him, and it helps him so much. So, I found them, like I said, by complete happenstance. And, when I got married, we didn't do like a whole big wedding. I didn't really want that. So we just had a dinner at a restaurant, and I had like a casino guy come and bring tables, and whoever won the most amount of money, I donated in their name to this place. And that's how I got kind of started with them. And, they just did their 5K last week, which is great. They raised a lot of money for this. And I can't say enough good things about Fort Cameron. And, any organization that is trying to do anything with addiction and trying to fight it, it's,
please reach out to Fiona. She's to get them on here, and whoever would like to from that organization. It's an open door, man. I would be honored to have them on.
Yeah, I'll let them know actually right after this. Absolutely.
Yeah, please do. And I know Coach can't say enough about her as well. And I always say too to people that are guests on this show that this is never just a one and done, because that's just senseless. I mean, why do a recovery? Thank you for being on, and no, man, because our life isn't one and done. Sure. Our story isn't one and done. So, I mean, please, we're going to stay in touch, and with you, with your organization, with Fiona, with their organization as well. Because if we don't, we're just going to sit stagnant. So let's just keep this thing growing.
Right.
We're out here every 6 weeks or so, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. But we'll be in touch with you if you want to come back on. Like you said, the story never ends, and there's parts that's like, oh, I forgot about this one. And to help people, things change in your life every day. Absolutely. And the organization's life every day. So, we'll be in touch with you as well. So let's just keep going forward with this.
Yeah, my only ask, I do think that the Lions are playing against the Giants this year. Don't talk to me around that time.
I will. You know what? I will. I've seen how they've been doing, and I'm sorry.
I actually love the Lions as an organization.
We went through 60 years.
Correct.
So
correct. And I have nothing against the Lions, but try to schedule our discussions around that.
It'll be before or after. Well, you know what? I was going to say either before, but that could be bad, or after.
If the Giants are remarkably doing well, which I think we have a chance, but I say that every year, talk to me anytime you want.
I'm telling you, man. See, as a Lions fan, you can relate, because it was just like 0-16. I mean, for us to 15-2, I was like, are you kidding me? So, but I will make sure to make a note of that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you knew two things about me, number one, that I'm a drug addict, number two, that I'm a Giants fan, wouldn't take too long to figure out why.
You got it. Well, Eric, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we leave, one more time for your where you're at, and where people could find you.
First and foremost, Fort Cameron, nonprofit organization. Please donate, get in touch with us, how we, if we can help you or you can help us. We also offer scholarships to Gateway Community College for people to become licensed alcohol and drug counselors. So please get in touch with us, fortcameroninc.com. And Comprehensive Mental Health Solutions is private practice. We offer therapy, psychiatry for adolescents and adults. There
you go. Please take advantage of it, man. It's been a short time, but I tell you what, his heart's in the right place. The organization, everything they're doing, take advantage of it. Reach out. That's why we're here. So until then, man, I really appreciate you guys taking your time to spend this time with us. So reach out to us at My Fight Our War on YouTube, Instagram, all the platforms. And until then, man, keep fighting the good fight.